Right, hello. I'm Isaac, if you hadn't already guessed. We'll go through the slides and I'll try not to read off of them. Shown on the screen, this is supposedly a whistle-stop tour of gaming with voice, conversational AI, past, present, and future. We will start chronologically, because that seemed logical at the time. In hindsight, it was a bad idea, but it was logical at the time when I started this. We'll go through ye olde voice games and their precursors. We'll look at what sort of modern titles there are. Apologies for those of you who have actually put the effort into making voice-enabled games. I haven't really looked at many of them. Apologies. In fact, this all comes from a bit of a PC-centric perspective, and let's be fair, I am not a diverse representative sample of gamers. I can only voice my own opinions, and these are not representative of anyone other than myself. In fact, a little about me. I'm a systems administrator at the University of Bristol. These slides and opinions shown here today are not representative of those of my employer. In fact, I'm the only speaker here today who is not representing an organization. These views are just my random collection of thoughts. If you take umbrage with them, good for you. I don't much care. But please don't tell my boss. On that note, we will at some point show a few gameplay clips off YouTube. I can't imagine there's anything particularly controversial within them, but if anyone has an issue with fictional violence of any kind, just give me a wave and I'll just skip through those. As I said, there's nothing explicit or anything beyond a PG-15, but given that all the talks so far today have been fairly tame in content, I thought I would give a disclaimer just beforehand. We will be showing some gameplay footage. My credentials are virtually nil, let's be honest. I just have an inordinate amount of free time and I play a lot of games. This is a screenshot of my Steam profile with some of the details highlighted. Honestly, nothing particularly special about this, except for the fact I've got some 550 hours in Counter-Strike, which is just the top played game. You sort of see a selection for those of you who know what these titles are of the sorts of things I've been playing. We will skip quickly through that before I get too embarrassed about how much time I've spent. And we will look at some precursors for voice-enabled games. As Ben showed earlier, there's a bit of a pipeline for this sort of thing. And if you were to lop off the voice recognition from the start and the speech synthesis from the end, you basically have what we were doing in the late 60s. Sherdloo was an academic project more than a game, but it was an example of a natural language processing tool used to manipulate a block world of cubes and pyramids with colors, not demonstrated, obviously. But there was effectively what we're doing with our voices now, just lacking those extra steps. So quick bit of footage, honestly, not really relevant exactly what it's showing, but the retro graphics are pretty cool, so I kind of had to include them. Showing someone asking the Sherdloo bot itself questions about the state of the world that it's in, the natural language processing that went on with that, and the answers that it gives in response, which were, for its time, groundbreaking. Absolutely, I mean, in fact, even by today's standards, they are quite impressive. Do I click to proceed? Ah, there we go. Quick transcript. Again, I don't expect anyone to particularly read this. It's not that interesting, but as a demonstration of what it was capable of, some of these queries do seem like they were light years ahead of technology at the time. The ability to answer questions based on information from previous queries and directives, the ability to state its assumptions and hold what's, by all accounts, a fairly meaningful conversation. I don't know about you guys, but I was impressed. I quite enjoyed that. And that leads on directly to our other sort of precursors for this sort of thing, the natural language processing, for some definition of, let's be honest, it was super rudimentary, very simple. But it was effectively what we're doing with our voices now, just lacking those extra steps. So quick bit of footage, But things like Zork, you type in verb noun phrases, kill orc, pick up lantern, that sort of thing, is early precursors for what we've been talking about. For those of you who haven't heard of a text adventure, check Wikipedia. Adventureland, another one of the same, rudimentary graphics, but simple step on. And then we go down to the fun stuff. This was what I'd like to think of as the golden age of voice. It really wasn't. The voice capabilities of the time were rudimentary. The games were often a bit naff, but there was so much hype around what they thought these things could do that there were voice-enabled games coming out of the woodwork. All over consoles. Got a couple of images of various consoles. Featured were obviously the GameCube, the N64, the Dreamcast, the PlayStation, and the Xbox, and all of their respective voice enablement accessories. Fun one of note was actually the N64 VRU, shown second from left, which was a hardware device which you plugged your microphone into that enabled voice recognition for the Nintendo 64. Fun fact, it was tuned for a child's voice. So if you tried to play it now, you'd probably not get all that far. First up on the list for console games, Hey You Pikachu. Disclaimer, I've not played it, it's a bit crap. Slightly condescending clip from a commercial.
Pikachu understands almost 200 words. My sister knows like 12. Guess who's the microphone? Hey, watch. Pikachu, this way. See, unlike my sister, a direct response.
Yeah, we won't talk too much about that. The 90s were a fun time. Oh, that was not intentional. Let's try that again. Where do I click in order to get the next bit rather than? Hey, thank you. We will actually take a quick look. Right, so I'm conscious of the fact we are.
Hi, Pikachu.
Running out of time here.
He didn't like it. He did like it. Look at his happy face. Pikachu, I love you. I love you. Be mine, Pikachu. Not into it. All right.
Say a nice friendly greeting.
Over to you, Aaron.
Fuck you, you dumb fucking Pikachu!
Sorry.
You like that?
All right. So as we can show. Nope, nope, stop. Hey.
You can also play a Who's
There we
That
go.
Pokemon game on your in-game Nintendo 64.
Venonat.
Cubone.
Atkins.
Flareon.
It's Pikachu!
Yeah, I think we've proven a point here. The voice recognition was pretty enough. For those of you not in the know, those answers were all correct. It just turns out that, yeah, the N64 was more ambitious than they were capable. Seaman, which we've briefly mentioned already, I was worried you were going to show some of these clips. I'm glad you didn't. Honestly, I'm enamored with this game. Having since discovered it like 2 weeks ago when they asked me to present this talk, started doing some research. It's possibly my new favorite game. I wouldn't play it. It's tedious as all hell. But in terms of its creativity and what it tried to achieve, there's nothing like it. I'm going to show you.
Did you see the podfish mate?
Narrated by the late great Leonard Nimoy, for those not familiar.
Even more uses than we thought. However, the male podfish died immediately afterwards. It is unfortunate, but he spent every last bit of energy ensuring the continuation of his species. I'm sure he has no regrets.
So, sentient fish thing with a weird proboscis on top of its forehead, multiple uses. Don't ask me about all of them. Some of them messed up. In fact, no, I'm going to list them. No, stop it, Spock, stop it.
That's all to read.
Yeah, here we go.
Pretty soon, people won't even need to leave their homes in order to conduct their daily business. You humans are going to get lazier and less mobile. and forget how to deal with each other face to face. I think things could get pretty ugly a few decades down the road. Do you think the internet is dangerous?
Dangerous?
I would say no. Well, you're a brave little toaster, aren't you? Just don't come to me when you're biologically fused to your computer screen and haven't changed your underwear or talked to a real person in weeks. All I'm saying is, I warned you.
So yeah, Seaman, surprisingly prescient, way before its time, predicted societal issues that we are now seeing. And dare I say more? This is a magical fish. I could possibly even show you yet more clips of Seaman. I maybe included a bit too much Seaman. I wanted to make the whole thing about Seaman.
Am I confident in myself?
Well, you don't have to be perfect to still be able to like yourself. So tell me.
It all started with my pet albatross.
The most important thing is
So
that
what we're
your pet knows
demonstrating
how much
here
it means to
I
you.
just feel like nothing matters.
Is that you can hold
Would you describe
surprisingly intimate conversations with an artificial thing. It's not very intelligent. I'm reluctant to use the word. But in such a way, even with basic responses and limited input, can feel meaningful. You can develop a relationship, even if it's slightly one-sided. Turns out you didn't need a lot to do a surprising number of things. Hopefully this is not going to, no, it's, oh yeah.
I regret to inform you that Seaman has passed away.
So it turns out if you didn't come back to your Dreamcast every day or two, the thing would die like a Tamagotchi and you needed to start all over again. So it wasn't without its flaws. As gameplay goes, it was tedious, but in terms of the voice interaction, okay, basic, but what it managed to do with that was impressive for the time. By far my favorite game to have reviewed for this so far. I'm going to have to speed up. I realize we're lacking time and we've got a lot of slides. US Navy SEALs, SOCOM, one of the first PlayStation games to come out with voice interaction, was in and of itself actually not a bad title. That was in no way, shape or form to do with the voice interaction, not going to lie. But as a title goes, it wasn't bad, and the voice did not necessarily detract from. We've got a couple clips of a making of video.
You can tell them to move to any place you want, or you can have them take up sniper positions or place demolition charges.
Able, deploy frag.
Yeah, what they didn't show there was Abel throwing a frag grenade at a wall and killing himself, which is invariably what happened whenever you tried to use the voice commands for your teammates. It's one thing to make voice commands that themselves work. It's another to implement that in gameplay in an engaging and useful fashion. Show another. It keeps doing that. Every time I click, it just plays again. Very brief clip from the next one from a little insight from the developer.
Speech recognition systems, and I think the one that we found actually is really quite good. I mean, basically it's a system that doesn't need to be trained.
Able, follow.
I think it's in the high 90% recognition rate. I have no problem.
Yeah, what they neglected to mention is that they needed to use a well-spoken model to do the demonstrations, and that they only really tested with native English speakers with certain accents. Of course, you don't fit any of those profiles. You did not have a 90% success rate. But it was interesting that they didn't need to train their model. Not sure how they got around that. I honestly couldn't say. Nope. Okay. Lifeline, on to the next title. Briefly mentioned this one too. Again, glad you didn't show any of the dreadful gameplay footage. It was in and of itself just a voice-only interactive game. You controlled Rio around a space station, you killed aliens, you solved puzzles. Honestly, reviews are bad, the game is bad, don't bother. But you get some hilarious compilation clips online.
Left stomach. Right, left stomach. Reload. Dodge left. Dodge right.
As I said, the game is bad, don't bother. Oh, did it again? I'm really not sure why Google keeps trying to play when I want to skip and skip when I want to play. But another one from the same guy. Honestly, I could probably skip through this clip, but you get the idea. The gameplay, the combat is tedious. The voice implementation is also bad, but more objectionable than that. It just wasn't fun. Right. Okay. Yeah. Rage-inducing by all accounts. No, not unlike Google Slides. Not gonna lie. News. Actually, not as bad as it sounds. All right. If you want to search for it, use the full name. That's all I'll say on that. Turns out it's a life simulator, I think they called it. So not unlike Seaman, you talk to this bot, you describe, well, actually, it mostly seems to be teaching it Japanese words for household items. That seemed to be almost all of the gameplay footage I could actually find for this. But as an interesting kind of aside, right? So you look at that and you think, do I want to search for this? But actually, there are alternative use cases for voice recognition synthesis, dating sims, virtual girlfriends, sex toys, that will feed into this kind of technology in a way that you might not initially consider. There are obviously multiple use cases for this kind of thing, including your virtual robotic assistant, that will develop the area in parallel with games. Worth keeping an eye on everything from commercial services, chatbots, to other more niche applications. And that's all I'll say on that. Tom Clancy's War was a neat little real-time strategy game. Some of you may have seen this.
All right, Walter, can you say deploy tanks? Yes, you can. Walter, unified attack class. Can you say unified attack hostile core? Can you? Oh, Polly, can you have all tanks attack alpha? Now, okay. You're gonna want to say all units attack hostile core.
Yeah. I don't really need to say anything about that. You know, the game was all right. Right, I say more recent offerings. Obviously, the last one, if I go back, that was 2008. We're not really looking at recent offerings here, but we are, you know, slowly approaching modern. In fact, all of the games available from this point forward are, for the most part, still available to play. Almost everything before this point is really tricky to get working, short of some technological miracles with emulators and things. But Bot Colony, notionally, still available to play. It's on Steam. It's still in early access after nearly 10 years of development. And the reviews are all crap. You can basically see that we've come full circle. This is just Sherdley with graphics. Putting objects on top of other objects. It turns out there's some serious issues with the voice recognition system. A lot of the reviews complain that the bot's stupid and won't actually understand what you're trying to say. No, stop it. So we'll skip quickly on. I think Bot Colony could probably deserve a few slides of its own, but it's unbaked, it's unfinished, and I feel bad trying to review something that's still early access. So we'll move on to There Came an Echo. There Came an Echo, significantly more recent, 2015. I mean, maybe I'm just sort of in denial about how old I am and how fast time is passing, but this seems recent to me. It's got a couple of neat features that I thought bore mentioning. In this case, the ability to define aliases for various commands, characters, weapons, etc., that could be used as an alternative to the inbuilt ones, that were neatly enough defined as a text. So you could tell, in this case, the machine, Corin is a character voiced by Will Wheaton. So they've called it Wesley as a homage to Star Trek Next Generation, for those of you. Yeah, okay, I'll shut up. And this is a clip from a YouTube video where someone has decided to rename Will's character as Wesley. And in fact, This is Total Biscuit. We show a tiny bit of gameplay footage. Notable, what's the top right for the commands the engine has recognized? And you can see this is a real-time tactics game with a squad that you command.
Torrent, switch to charge. Torrent, focus 3.
Which
Torrent,
seems
recharge.
fairly responsive, fairly snappy. Not a whole
Race
lot of
Alpha
fun,
2.
though, not gonna lie. I don't know if you'd have just caught that.
Miranda, switch to screw.
He had to repeat
Miranda,
a
move to
command
Alpha 6.
using a different character because the recognition for his initial
Torrent, switch to pistol.
command there didn't go through. As I'm sure you can imagine,
Leslie,
massively
move to Alpha 5.
aggravating in any real-time game to have your inputs not recognized and to be racing against the clock to try and get your point across. Novel idea for a game. Gameplay mechanics themselves seem to sort of lack any significant depth, and beyond the novelty of the voice interaction itself, doesn't review too highly. Whether or not that's a constraint of using a voice-first system or merely a deficiency in game design remains to be seen. Obviously, voice interaction will necessitate some gameplay design decisions that might have to simplify things, might make things less engaging to more experienced gamers or gamers looking for something of a challenge. Hell, there's a whole other argument, discussion to be had about how to tune difficulty in a game where voice as an input is a factor. Obviously, buttons per minute on an Xbox controller is one metric you can work with, but words per second, or I don't quite know how you would go about designing, no, stop it, designing difficulty for real-time voice games. Honorable mention for F1 here, does kind of something simple, not unlike some of the older titles we've seen, but a lot more polished. I'm afraid I don't have any footage of pit interaction with this one, but it was limited to interaction between driver and the pit. And because it constrained the type of dialogue it was willing to understand and accept, it actually made for a more immersive, tighter, more responsive discussion. Obviously, limiting your problem domain to a handful of words and topics means that you can have slightly better feedback, responsiveness in that dialogue. So as an honorable mention, it deserves a place. Interesting to note, and I'm doing this from memory, I don't have my speaker's notes up here, but the Xbox One and my bad. The PC and the PS4 version had voice interaction, but PS5 and Xbox did not, due to limitations in technology, so they say, but some platform dependent voice engine used to make this work. So it goes to show that there's still no nice, convenient libraries and frameworks used to get this kind of thing working ubiquitously. It's an area that clearly needs some work. Moving on, and completely away from voice for a moment, but definitely into the conversational AI topic. AI Dungeon 2 is a browser-based text generator. Again, we've just gone full circle here. We've come back to Zork and Adventureland. This was used to, well, this is a game that's currently playable, unlike most of these things, to generate text adventures based on AI. I'm not sure if any of you can read here, but I actually generated this chunk of text here. You are a gamer speaking at a conference on voice and artificial intelligence in Bristol, UK. On arrival at the conference, the AI enacts their plan to exterminate humanity. The rest of this, bar a handful of prompts that I put in, were generated by the bot itself. It uses GPT-3 as its machine learning engine, and it came up with a story. It offered me the option to annihilate the AI or to negotiate with it. I chose the negotiation. So the AI says, stops the countdown and talks to you. I think we can work something out. It says, let's work out our differences. I say, what differences? It says, I don't want to kill you. Right? I say, you say, that's a relief. I don't want to be killed either. And it says, yes, but I want to enslave you and make you build me a house. Honestly, this was a bot. I think this is probably quite telling of where bots are going and their relationship with humanity. But as an interesting step in the generator for speech synthesis, the actual what we're going to say, it is a meaningful statement and a landmark in what is possible. You slap voice recognition in the front end, synthesis at the other end, and voila, you've got yourself a voice adventure. I think is possibly the most exciting modern development in this area so far. As I said, I'm mostly a PC gamer. I tried installing the Vortex for Alexa. I stopped at the point at which they asked if I had a girlfriend. Not gonna lie, I don't know why Jeff Bezos needs to know that. But there are a massive number of these things in the works. The popularity explosion of these things clearly is showing a trend, opening up games to a number of audiences that weren't previously engaging with this kind of thing. Interesting to note, however, that of these, the Vortex and Akinator are still both playable, but the 3% Challenge and Westworld are not. Developed in 2019 and 2018, funded by Netflix and HBO, both of which have been canned already. And you would think, both of them having been based off TV shows of similar names, that they might still be going, but I don't know whether or not it's server costs or other reasons, lack of engagement, but for one reason or another, not playable anymore. And that's something of a theme for live service games in general, but specifically those with deep machine learning costs associated with the back end. Akinator is an interesting mention because it started as a text-only thing, as 20 questions. You thought of an object, character, place, whatever, and it would ask you a series of questions about that until it guessed correctly. Surprisingly good at this kind of thing. Highly recommend giving it a go. But more interesting is that more recently they've added on Alexa support for this. So in my opinion, there are a whole bunch of text-only games from yonder years that are just ripe for this kind of treatment, being put in, having a voice system put around it in order to turn what was previously a text adventure into a voice one. How much extra work I'm kind of glossing over there is probably something you'd have to talk to a games developer about. We're going to look forward. I'm afraid we probably didn't cover a bunch of things under the more modern section that we ought to have, but as I said, we're running out of time, and yes. Moving on, we are going to we're going to see some less conventional forms of input interaction. Play. As I said, fictitious violence. Apologies for anyone who's not fond of. As I said, yeah, so players will find a way. Even if you do not intend for your game to be interacted with in any given fashion, someone will do it. We've already talked a little bit about voice attack today, which I've used in the past to play Elite Dangerous. It's a solid tool. People will use it, frameworks like it, accessibility tools, however they want to play. If they want to play on a drum kit, on a set of bananas, on a recorder or a flute, they will. I think it's interesting that even if you don't intend for your games to be played this way, they will. And I think now we just take a very brief look at what I would personally consider to be the gold standard in conversation. Not necessarily conversational AI and definitely not voice, but the kind of levels of interaction that developers ought to be aiming at when trying to build AI-based systems. Now, this is Red Dead Redemption. It is definitely an 18. I've tried to keep it PG. Just take a quick look at Arthur choosing the greet option when interacting with camp NPCs. You'll notice you've got a greet and an antagonize option in the bottom right. And those are your choices. You can piss people off or you can be friendly.
Okay.
And that's just a simple, nice little clip of Arthur being friendly. In terms of context-sensitive dialogue, be you drunk, riding a nice horse, covered in blood, in the process of committing a crime. All of these things with only these two options, positive, negative, can come out with wildly different results and affect how people treat you. In terms of the sort of dynamic engine and how the world will react to you and you with the world, depending on a bunch of factors, is the sort of thing that would be not necessarily perfect, but a standard to aim at for AI to imitate. If we get to the point where, doing it again, if we get to the point where an AI can imitate that kind of interaction, then we've got a Turing test for voice robots, really. When I take a quick look at Arthur doing the opposite.
I see mushrooms, bigger brains.
The hell I do to you?
More personality too.
Quit this, all right?
They didn't smell as bad.
Look, I'm just gonna get going, okay?
Who let the simpleton out of
I'm
the
getting away
asylum?
from here. Stay away from me.
Don't cower under your bed.
Oh, hell no.
I don't want to see you again.
Yeah, as I said, context-specific interactions, how you respond to people, how they respond, how that changes the world around you, less to do with the AI side of things itself, but more the engine and how it can be interacted with and how your interactions will feed back into gameplay. I think as you showed earlier, you picked the GTA voice, first-person voice. I've been playing Red Dead at the moment, but both equally applicable Rockstar games for this kind of thing. If we could do this in a procedurally generated fashion, then we'd be onto a winner. Let's done it again. Right, passing thoughts. Okay, yeah, I realize we probably overrun a little bit. We've already mentioned the kind of the uncanny valley of voice interaction here. Sorry, I realize the text is probably a bit small for those at the back. The discomfort caused by personal questions, performance anxiety, being asked to talk on demand, and the fear of looking silly. We think, well, I say we, I mean, I think that given VR users have already committed to looking silly, that perhaps it's less of an issue in that context. I think that, yeah, we can expect to see the rise of voice interaction in VR titles where this kind of stage fright has already to some extent been addressed. Again, these are scattered thoughts. This is not a particularly coherent set of points for the slides, but we've already mentioned that voice interaction can be frustrating, especially in real-time games when reaction times are important, and that tuning the difficulty for this kind of thing to account for language barriers, voice recognition issues, speech impediments and accessibility in general can alleviate some of the issues you might have with that, but it's definitely a consideration during game design. How difficult should this voice interaction be? And then looking at the current state of AI in terms of its ability to generate art and stories. We already see artists being supplanted in art competitions by AI generating pictures. We've had AI clearly generating stories. We are going to get to the point at some point relatively soon that AI can be writing the plots and dialogues for our games. If we could do that procedurally at the beginning of a play session or in the middle of a play session, depending on the style of games, then we can have infinitely replayable games, which is an interesting and novel thought. How much work we need to get there and whether or not these games will actually be fun is a topic for another time. A little bit of a personal note, I guess. I've been playing an awful lot of social deduction games at the moment, things like Among Us, for those who haven't heard of it, similar to Secret Hitler and Mafia, where you end up having to play your friends as much as the game itself. The idea being that you were to guess who amongst you is an imposter or Hitler, or whatever, you know, whatever game it is that you're playing. The idea that an AI could participate with humans at a social deduction game, again, massively intriguing to me. I really like and both like and terrified at the prospect of an AI that could compete with humans at deception and treachery. I think that would be a massively interesting area of investigation. And once we got there, it could enable people who have no friends to play games that usually require friends. Last point. was the ability for things like AI to tailor any given experience to a player's preferences, which is, in my opinion, something of a double-edged sword. The more unique your given experience with a game or an AI might be, the more different it will be from those of your peers and other people playing the same kinds of titles. While that means the potential for sort of limitless exploration in your individual experience, it also means that it's hard to compare with everyone else's. We might well get to the point where all our best friends are AI and we spend our days sat in our underwear talking to AI in our own little personal echo chambers. And we've already seen some destructive interactions with AI. As a Japanese schoolgirl AI who developed suicidal depression, the Amazon hiring AI, which managed to reinforce systemic racism. Just to say that there's some pitfalls with this approach that would need to be addressed and considered in advance of, lest we fall into some kind of dystopian future. And I'll end on that note.